On this episode, we're talking about the difficult question of whether you should take children to funerals. Hello and welcome to TGI Monday. It's back together again. Hal, you've got some news to share.
Yeah, thanks for that. We've had a final figure in from our pilgrimage for the poor. We raised over £700.
Brilliant.
Me and
Well
Andrew for that, so that was good.
Wow.
And you can check out our video on the YouTube video on the YouTube site. So that was quite good.
Andrew pleased?
Yeah, he's really chuffed with that, and
Good on him. Well done,
and his
Andrew.
prayer staff is still in my office.
Beautiful.
So it was really good. That was.
Well,
Fantastic. Might you do another one?
We might do. We'll have to wait and see. The missus is on about doing what's that one? The Way of St James, but we found out how long that is.
Santiago. It's very long.
I was going to say, but that film, The Way, sort of inspired us to have a go. But we might do it over several.
I'm going to try and do it on a horse at some point.
On a horse?
You can ride it.
Can you?
Yeah, I couldn't walk it, but I can ride it.
Wow.
How long was the one that you did? How far did you go?
It was about just under 40 miles, and it's the Peaks Pilgrimage, which is in the Peak District, and it's brilliant. It's absolutely beautiful.
I bet.
It's absolutely wonderful.
Great.
You know.
Exciting. Now, we've had a question in from Belinda. She asks, what do you all think about children attending funerals? She said she recently had to make this decision and was just surprised to hear so many different opinions on the subject. So I wonder, have any of you all have children, have any of your children been to funerals? And if so, sort of at what age or at what stage did you make the decision
Not yet,
to take them or not take them?
Well, I absolutely would have taken them, but was asked not to. Because that's always... That ends up being what people really want to know, and whilst children cope incredibly well, better than grown-ups with some of this, with death, and there's lots of ways of helping them with that, they can be much more matter-of-fact in lots of ways. Adults don't want to grieve in front of children.
Simon, your children are a bit older. I wonder, have they been to funerals? At what sort of age?
One a couple of years ago, so they were teenagers.
Yeah, I think I was about 13.
I think it's different though, depends whether it's someone they're close to or someone that you won't take them unnecessarily.
No.
But if it's a family.
I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, but I think that for me is quite key. Is that if it's a parent or a grandparent, then kids need space to grieve too, and a funeral can be a place that gives them the opportunity to grieve, and actually also a place for them to see their other family members grieving properly, because death is real, and because we live in a society where actually we've talked about this on the show lots of times, haven't we? That we try to kind of put death in a box and keep it as far away as possible, and then we can't deal with it, of course, when it happens. And for kids to come and see parents grieving in a healthy way actually helps them in their life when they encounter death to grieve in a healthy way too. But having said that, there's always sensitivities, aren't there? Like you said about, I'm not sure I would take I know I wouldn't take my kids to a bulk standard funeral, but if it was my death, then I would imagine they would be there.
Thing is, I mean, and I know Belinda, and it was her and I have talked about why this is relevant for her. And one of the things we've talked about is actually that children can, particularly if it's someone that they have lost, I don't know about you, but I imagine you come across plenty of adults who say, well, I never got to say goodbye. The grown-ups just disappeared. I don't really know what happened. And because children aren't given any tools to then move forward or a language to talk about this, it's not that they just don't think about it. They then just fill in the blanks and come up with sometimes really horrible alternative realities that live with them as adults. And so I think there's an important part of that for kids.
I sort of had that experience as an adult in a strange way. So my grandfather died while I was living in America, and it was all quite difficult because he was quite ill, and trying to make the decision about when to come back and what to do. And in the end, I decided, well, I'll just book flights and I'll come back. And he was still alive at that point, and I was able to see him, and then went back, and then didn't fly over 2 weeks later when he died, and it was the funeral. And actually, it really surprised me how hard that was. Over the next year, I felt like I hadn't had that moment of, I'd said goodbye, but I hadn't had that moment of being together with the family and experiencing it together and sharing memories and all of those things which a funeral gives you that opportunity, not just the funeral, but the time afterwards as well, when you're talking with people and so on. And actually, I hadn't realised how important that was until I didn't have that experience.
I think it's all about options, mind, because I think there's no right or wrong answer, because all children are very different. And I've often said to parents, it's a decision that only they can make about this particular very unique situation that they're in. So I've done funerals from everything from little children of about 4 giving a eulogy, which was really beautiful. That was lovely, that was. She just got up and said, "Goodbye, Grandad," which was really nice. And that was quite helpful, because I knew the family really well, so that was okay, so I could help out with that. To other ones where, teenagers, really couldn't just face it. I think what I do sometimes, quite a lot of the time, is I do a separate funeral for the children. So they have the opportunity to say goodbye. So we do something sometimes at the crematorium or at the grave, where we have a shorter service which is geared towards the children, and we have balloons, or sometimes if it's darker we use those Chinese lanterns.
Please don't
or we
use
let them
those.
go. I know, I'm not going to get into that, but we do all that. But one funny thing is when we had, this is with kids, is that we were at the crematorium and we let these red balloons go, and one of them got caught in the tree and was there for about 3 months.
Oh dear.
And the little girl said, she goes, "Well, that's Dad, isn't it?" And I thought, yeah, that is him, yeah. And he was up there. And I think the thing is, we need as a church to provide those essential rituals and those essential options for people, because there is no right or wrong answer. No. It's got to be...
And in a large family, actually, which is this context, it is different, as you say, everybody's very different. But being open about that, and actually not being afraid to grieve. And because, as you say, death is a huge part of everybody's life, and whilst we want to protect and make children safe, if we make crying in front of them a thing that is impossible, we kind of make them afraid of crying. And actually, love is a messy emotion which involves belly laughter and snot and tears, and that actually is not just allowed but important, that all of love is part of that story. And
also to pick up,
it's hard.
To pick up on what you said a minute ago about the possibility of children creating their own reality, the funeral service gives you a point of focus as to what's happening next to the loved one. It actually helps you to understand what's going on next, and children need that just as much as adults do. In fact, many times more. So if it's the right context for children to come along, if they're grieving, if they're mourning, giving them their own funeral, their own funeral service, or giving them, allowing them to share in it, I think it's really... can be important.
And I think even if you decide it's not the right thing to bring your children to the funeral for whatever reason, it is very important that you do talk to them about what happens at the funeral, about death, about the reality, that it's okay for them to be sad and to cry. I think, certainly in my family, I think a lot of protecting goes on, and sort of protecting yourself, so not crying in front of your children, protecting them from seeing how awful you feel, and actually it's much better that people see that and know that that's normal.
And that it doesn't carry on. It doesn't carry on forever, does it?
Exactly.
And even something, would you like to? Because if children say I don't want to come, then it's not right to force them either. But giving them, would you like to write Granny a letter, and we'll go and we'll go and do something with that together.
That's what we do.
Quite often, light a small fire in the garden. Have that moment of this is you expressing the ending of that relationship, but that love goes on, and that's okay.
The only thing I would say, which we can definitely say, is the wrong thing to do in these situations is to not be truthful with the children. And I think that is a huge temptation for us as parents, is to cover it up and to not tell the truth. And that's perfectly understandable temptation that we go through.
But we're not actually protecting them, because kids do experience death on a daily basis through computer games and through TV shows, and if that's their only
pets.
And if that's the only experience of death they're having is these kind of almost artificial types, then we're not allowing them to have a holistic perspective of what's really going on at the life-death cycle.
As adults, we tend to talk about death in quite euphemistic ways, and we need to again remember that doesn't really work with children. They need concrete truths. They don't just, you know, if you say she's just next door, they'll think she's just next door, and actually that doesn't help.
Yeah.
They can do, yeah.
Exactly. Well, you know,
They
just,
can do.
you know, that actually more concrete, clear language is very helpful.
But we have to remember as well is that it's very, very tempting for people to fall into those traps, and people are trying, in that moment of bereavement, people are just trying to do their best.
And
we're not going to get it right.
Whatever
And
that is.
God's forgiveness and our forgiveness to those people in bereavement is infinitely important.
Yeah.
You can just do your best, and that's not going to be perfect, and that's kind of okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I hope that's helped, Belinda. We don't think there is one right answer, depending on the child, depending on the situation, depending on all kinds of things. But we do think it's very important to be there and talk with your children and listen to them as well.
This is one of those conversations that can go on and on because we all have experiences of it. So we'd like to continue the conversation with you online. We're particularly active on Facebook, so please share your experiences with us there or keep asking us your questions. But also we're on Twitter and YouTube comment section as well.